Namaskar, I'm Dr. Rama Paurel. Welcome to 9th episode of SCIPOD, the conversation on science, policy and development issues in Nepal. Science entrepreneurship focuses both on academic science and commercial profit and is important to increase national science and technology development.
Global IME Bank, सबैका लागि bank.
Economic growth and national competitiveness. Science entrepreneurship in one sector can open doors to many other sectors. For example, investment in biotechnology and pharmaceuticals industries can boost other economic sectors such as medicine, environment, agriculture, food products, information technology, and emerging industries such as nanotechnology and health and beauty products. However, science entrepreneurship is still a new area in Nepal. In this episode, we will be discussing the status and prospect of science entrepreneurship in Nepal. Our guest for today is Dr. Pratibha Pandey. Dr. Pratibha Pandey is founder CEO of Catalyst Technology and Harveda Botanicals, is an award-winning scientist and science entrepreneur. She has received her PhD in organic chemistry and nanotechnology from Northwestern University in USA with a rich background encompassing more than 15 years of research, technology transfer and industrial expertise across US, South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, Singapore and Nepal. Dr. Pandey is committed to the value addition of Nepal's medicinal aromatic plants through innovative technological and entrepreneurial approaches. Welcome, Dr. Pandey.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation.
As you are a science entrepreneur, first I would like to know what is the science entrepreneurship and how the entrepreneurship and science can be interconnected.
I get this question a lot. I'm also trying to figure out this. It's a very vast thing, I think, bringing science and entrepreneurship together. In my sense, I would say as a researcher, I'm trying to find solutions in lab for problems in different fields, right? And as an entrepreneur, I'm trying to use that scientific solution to solve market problems. And I think anyone that is trying to put in scientific interventions to solve market problems would be science entrepreneurs.
So how did you develop this capacity? You came from chemistry background, you did your PhD in chemistry, and now you are working in policy and science entrepreneurship that includes huge aspect of other leadership approaches as well. So how did you describe your journey?
Looking back, I think if someone told me I would do something like this in Nepal, being in the intersection of entrepreneurship, leadership, I guess like policy and research, I would be really amazed. Because when I went to college in the US, I went to liberal arts college. And with this focus, my major was in chemistry and mathematics. But over time, what I started learning in liberal arts setting is I started learning about religion, music, sociology, economics, and how they are also connected to science. And I think that really broadened my perspective. But at the core, I was still interested in sciences, physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology, and research. So after 3 years in my undergrad, I decided to go to grad school to do my PhD in chemistry. And at that point, I was very sure that I will, for my entire life, become a professor in chemistry or around that realm and be in academia forever. That's what I was thinking. And I would come back to Nepal. That's all I knew. But when I went to grad school, it was very interesting to see so many professors spinning off their research into industry.
Yes.
And
even the industry fund the research professor.
Exactly. So industries fund research professors. They have patents that was sold to like companies like Pfizer's, like pharmaceutical companies or nanotechnology companies. And I was in this International Institute for Nanotechnology as well, where at least 3 of the professors had their own company. So I was so fascinated with these world-class professors also have companies. And one of the professor, actually, Sir Fraser Stoddart, also won Nobel Prize in chemistry. So I was like, oh my God, you can do science like you know, in such a good way. At the same time, you can also become an entrepreneur. So that was fascinating for me. And when I was in second year of grad school, I started taking management courses at Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. And I realized soft skills are also very important as a researcher. And I was looking at my professor, and he was more of a manager than, you know, how you would see a scientist being in lab. He was a senior professor, so he would guide us as a scientist, but at the same time he had to be very good in managing us in administrative things and other things. So I realized, oh my God, these are very important skills. And when I started taking negotiation classes and all the papers that were stuck to be published, and you know I started learning how to negotiate with my professor to publish paper, to let me take classes, you know, to ask him to write me recommendations, and also how to work in a team.
Yes.
And that was very important for me since I was in a very collaborative project. So that was the point I realized I should not be just in lab. I should be in the intersection of academia and industry.
And also in leadership, when I saw your profile, you did not confine yourself in an academic journey. You took other skill courses, even from the Harvard University.
I think it's continuous learning. But also, I think the core of all of this, going into sciences, trying to do this, or entrepreneurship, is, I think at the core, I also was very much sure about my journey should be a journey of service.
You know, Pratibha-ji, one thing that I am realizing in Nepal is, like, in my first episode of SCIPOD, I talked with Dr. Shobha Paudel. She was from management background, and she came into agricultural sector, and she is doing very well. And here, our traditional education system, like if you were in science or if you are doing agriculture, you cannot go in other field, or from science people can go in other field somehow, but from management or liberal arts, if they are interested in science and technology, we just kind of did not open the door for that. So I think people like you were doing very well, and how you prepare yourself for the wider horizon of leadership, science and entrepreneurs, it's amazing. But what do you think about it? Is it the good environment for in Nepal, or does it need some changes on it?
So one of the things I left Nepal was because after finishing my high school, ISC, in biology, physics, mathematics, I realized I don't want to be, I'm not sure if I want to be a doctor or an engineer. I also knew that at this point, if I commit, I'll be that forever. If, you know, I'm doing this in Nepal. So I wanted to escape that. That was my only thing, you know, because I knew I can't do lateral moves. But in other countries, you can do lateral moves, you know, you don't have to commit so early. So the whole point of going to the US was I would get 2 more years to choose what I wanted to study, and still I could study other fields also. You know, that's why liberal arts college. I do think it is very necessary to let students to move laterally, you know. In other countries, they let you take prerequisite classes. You know, so if you're from not from a science background, but you want to go into sciences, so maybe you take the prerequisite basic science courses, and if you finish that, then you can go into that, you know, because life is so long, you don't want to be confined in this one box saying, oh, I'm a doctor forever, or I'm a scientist forever, you know. So that's one thing that I could explore in the US that was amazing. I don't think I could have done that in Nepal, you know, but I think one of the things why I wanted to come back was also that I knew as a 17, 18-year-old, I could not do that and stay back in Nepal for the things that I wanted to study. But I also knew that I wanted to come back for the same reason, to create a platform where others don't have to leave the country, because it was very painful for me to leave the country. I did not want to leave my country. I don't know at that point why I thought like this. I told my mother, I do not want to leave Nepal. It's very unfortunate that I have to go, but I will come back and change this. I don't know what I was thinking, but it was very ambitious.
We are having a new challenges, emerging challenges, and so we need to have innovation in every sector, and that's interconnected with each other. So connecting the dots, all these dots, we need to have a multidisciplinary approaches, right? So like I always advocate that for example, like somebody asked me, like, why are you in like a media? right? So
Right.
I'm in a science field. I'm in an agricultural field, but science communication is really important, right? So like I just thought that it's also an academic journey that creates a scientist and others a platform to share what they are doing
Yeah.
and how they are feeling.
Yeah.
That's why like I started these initiatives. So like in 'cause some of the academic institution, I really think that we need to have some modifications so that everybody can have a lateral growth.
And I think that I think the government is more open to doing that also. I am also a council member of Science, Technology, Innovation Implementation Plan, where we're looking at how do we let students do the lateral moves. Not immediately maybe in the mainstream education, but in CTEVT. So I'm also a assembly member of the CTEVT, where we're looking into how do we first upgrade the CTVT curriculum, which is really outdated, and also look into how do we create skills that is contextual to Nepal, and also how do we create human resource if they want to go higher into higher education. How do we make sure that there is a good credit transfer processes, but also let them move laterally among the similar streams.
Oh wow, that's really
government
great.
Is open to it now, I think, and it's a long way, but that's why we need scientists in journalism, in policy making, and unfortunately there are so few of us, I think, that are visible, the scientists. We are wearing several hats at the same time, and we talked about this as early researchers, having little kids, having to do the household work, but also manage the research and career work, but also having to do all these extra work, which is really voluntary work, but we believe that this is important to create an ecosystem for science and innovation, right?
Sure. So, Dr. Pratibha, like what I wanted to know is like usually like when people go to abroad, they don't want to come back, and if they come back, either they have a Fulbright or they have a government job. Like there are very few people now. Like there are increasing number of people coming back and like having new initiatives like industries. And I saw some of the new initiatives in biotechnology and IT. Those who have a higher education abroad. So what bring you such kind of motivations to have a science entrepreneurship research institution in Nepal, and how was it the journey? Was it, what were the challenges and what were the motivation factors for that?
I think there is an emotional part to it, and also the objective, more logical part. Emotional part is I always wanted to be home. And home is Nepal for me. Another emotional part is I know that the ecosystem is so weak. I felt like if I and other people like us come back and try to do something in Nepal, at least we can move the needle a little bit, so that it's easier for the next generation of scientists to do something here. From the logical side of things, there are so many gaps, but there are also many opportunities. So we do get the early mover advantage if we can actually crack some of the things.
Can you just elaborate that with some examples?
So early movers advantage because there's so
for example,
many
you
problems.
established this company, herbal company.
Yeah.
So how was your journey on that?
Yeah. So I came back to Nepal. I was still working for the same company in the US because they didn't want me to leave. So I did that for 2 another years, and I was leading from here in different countries, but I was going to Singapore every 10 days, and I was also pregnant during that time. But luckily I said I can only do that half time. So half time I was outside of Kathmandu trying to understand Nepal more, because I grew up in Kathmandu, studied in Kathmandu, so I hadn't seen Nepal much. My idea of being Nepali and Nepal was very, very narrow. So I wanted to broaden that, and as I did that, I saw huge potential in medicinal and aromatic plants.
Wow, yeah.
So many gaps in the supply chain also, and most of the raw materials without value addition are going to China, India, Hong Kong, Singapore. These are the top importers of Nepali medicinal plants, and mostly in a very in a transparent as well as non-transparent way, but also in a very unethical way in some ways, because the farmers and the collectors, the CFUGs, were not getting the kind of money they were supposed to get with the effort they were making. you know. And it was really exciting to see the potential, but it was really sad to see that the people who are the custodians of the planet and the nature, who are creating a thriving environment for these plants especially in the higher, you know, region that are affected by climate change, they are there and they're supporting and saving us, and they're the ones who are suffering, right? And so that's where I wanted to make sure that I do something in terms of research, but also entrepreneurial venture, so that we can economically empower these communities while also supporting them technically. And I wouldn't have done it if there was an ecosystem around it, but I saw that the business men or business women, whatever, business community were not interested in looking at the technical part, and the technical community and the researchers were very much interested in paper and research and all of that only. So I felt like I could be a connector and bridge. You know, and I studied to become that also somehow, right? When going to a management school as well as doing PhD in chemistry, and then looking at technology transfer in a semiconductor industry, I sort of felt like I could work on this, and that's how it started. And I just wanted to create 3 products and show how it should be done. The research part was done in Research Institute for Bioscience and Biotechnology before starting the company. And it just started growing and becoming really exciting, and it became very much part of my identity also, being connected to people, plants, science, and entrepreneurship at the same time, and trying to do that while giving back to the bottom line, economic bottom line of the country was something that was very exciting for me.
Let's talk about the plants now. Like if we talk about medicinal and aromatic plant, we also had one course in undergraduate, and it was exciting course, but we didn't continue it further. But are there like usually, like when I talk with the people in agriculture sectors, we don't really have a big farming of these medicinal aromatic plants, but we do collect what is available naturally. What did you find about that? Are there any farmers, entrepreneurs in supply chain or value addition? How is the condition of did you find in medicinal and aromatic plants?
So there is farming effort also, but you know, like some of the medicinal plants you can't really farm at certain elevation.
Yeah, like
and it's really hard, right? So Yarsagumba, even many more, right? Because there are thousands, more than 3,000 plus medicinal plants in Nepal, right? Flowering plants, all these plants. So basically things like, you know, lemongrass, we would say it more basic, right? So lemongrass, mentha, so peppermint, mint, amla, harobaro amla, you know, the gooseberries of Nepal that are highly used in medicinal plants, aloe vera, these are done in a commercial farmed way also. The things that we find in higher elevation like Sugandhaval, Valerina jatamasi or other things, they grow in wild. So they have to be collected. So, and there are CFUGs who also do farming, I would say, I don't know how you would call it, but not farming itself, farming in the community forest, right? So they would put like the plant.
Agroforestry.
So there is agroforestry also, where government has given 25% of forest land to the community forest user groups, like 13,000 CFUGs in Nepal. That's huge population, 1/3 of Nepal itself, right? So that is also there. But I think there is this missing link of the technical, there is a gap in technical capacity where people are not trained, or there isn't enough implementation of like how you cannot unsustainably harvest. When do you plant these certain things? You know,
how do you I mean, as a chemist from your early beginning, like chemistry, like how do you see plants? When you see plants, do you see all the chemicals, signaling chemicals, allelochemicals, all these chemicals inside plants, or how do you see plants now?
So when I came back to Nepal, I had zero idea about plants and chemicals in plants, you know, so I had to relearn also, and that's the whole journey of after you finish your PhD, that's how you teach yourself, right? So it was interesting, and when I look at plants, so as a botanist, someone would look at, petals, you know, sepals, this, that, xylem, phloem, and all of that, right?
Now you see alkaloids,
agronomist, you would look at it from a different point of view. For me, it's molecules dancing and basically holding each other's hand. That's like forming bonds and breaking bonds. So that's basically holding, things like that. So that's how I see it. And also with my background in drug discovery, I can differentiate them as single molecules, but also I can look at the synergies, right? And it becomes very complex in medicinal plants. And I realized that, we cannot.
Then also the stability of these molecules, right?
Yeah, stability of molecules. Especially, for example, there is a plant that grows in high elevation, low temperature, and you're extracting something, a single molecule compound from it. Then that molecule may not be stable at high temperature, right? So there are things like that too, you know, like if you extract something from a lichen in Antarctica, sure shot it's gonna not be stable in higher temperature, most of it, right? So things like that are also there, but we're looking at from a very, not so much micro, we're not looking at single molecules anymore in Nepal. So I am not, even though I'm a chemist, because we do not have the capacity to test it at that level, actually. We do not have
and identify and extract
so
that,
we don't
right?
have good NMRs, cozy, nosy, all these, like it needs high technology to do that. But we can do the simple things in a way where we can commercialize or standardize to a certain extent. And that's something I've been working on when we extract different combination of molecules from it. I create also methods to see, you know, what is necessary for us and what is not. From commercial point of view, I also know how to, as a Six Sigma green belt, I also know how to sort of optimize these processes and make sure that this is good enough for this industry. Let's say for skincare, the optimization or the standard deviation is very different than in pharma industry or in Ayurvedic industry. So we're looking at it. My interest right now in terms of medicinal plants is looking at it like the low-hanging fruits, like formulation of skincare, high-class skincare, looking at perfume industry, all of that. But also I want to look at it from the nutritional values of it, so that how can we incorporate in our daily lives also while taking reference of Ayurveda, right? And that's where I also did certification in Ayurveda.
I can just imagine how you brought this global perspective in Nepal, like how you were doing all these things together. It's really like advanced thought. And in Nepal, being a very diverse in nature, from 60 meter to Himalayan region, we do have so many plants diversity, medicinal plants diversity that we haven't even identified or even we described about it. How do you see that this industry moving forward, and how do you see like people like you growing in Nepal who are listening this podcast and still want to come back and continue in the sectors? How do you see the perspective for them?
If you realize the whole world is moving towards wellness, skincare, personal care, in the, like, you know, in terms of from a very chemical to natural now. It's shifting, right? And then the industry, the cumulative...
Even for the medicine now, like people are diverting to our Ayurvedic system. They are more inclined to Ayurvedic system these days, and it's increasing.
So there are issues in it also.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at skincare, other things, you know, like I said, if you have an optimized standardized system, you can work within it. When you're looking at more complex stuff, you know, trying to treat disease, a lot of times, I think there's so much pressure around clinical trials. You cannot do clinical trials of Ayurvedic medicine or concoctions of these, because there's hundreds of compounds in it. In the same way you would do single molecule or double molecule medicine. It's allopathic medicine, right? So modern medicine, we can't try to fit Ayurvedic medicine in a modern medicine box, you know. And I was actually first introduced to these natural product synthesis as a chemist in grad school, and I was fascinated with how science is informed and inspired by nature.
That's right.
Whether it's the DNA structure, whether it's the taxol that comes from Taxus baguata, you know, so, and then we say, we extract this molecule and then it cures cancer. But then we tend to forget that the whole, this knowledge system was built thousands of years ago before the science could verify. Before there was this microscope.
It's available in nature. Like my last guest was even like describing, we as how we are developing the antibiotic resistant these days, and we have a natural antibiotic resources in some of the Himalayan regions in upper elevation
very
Nepal.
smart, you know that how they communicate, how they express different kind of secondary metabolites based on the environment they're in, right? So they can express like how we express hormones. They also have their own mechanism to do that, and we tend to see them as this inanimate object, which is not true, so I think those things have to be understood also. It's a very vast and complex thing, like one person, one community only cannot do it. It is itself a interdisciplinary thing,
So I just wanted to know, like, to do all these things, you definitely need some like-minded people, some mentors, some group. How are you managing it? Are there any support group you are taking, or like it's an exciting area of intervention in future for our economic growth, for our identity, for our development in science. And if you are developing science, for example, if you are developing in games, you are recognized. Similarly, if you are like develop in science and technology, you will be recognized globally, right? So that's why like it's very important for Nepal. So how is the ecosystem for that in Nepal?
So fortunately, I think in grad school, I told you, I learned how to collaborate and talk with people from different backgrounds, not just science. From management to engineers to chemistry to biology, all of that. But I was also trained like in a basic level, fundamental level in college, that because I took all the classes possible from biology to chemistry to physics to mathematics, that so I could understand the language and bring people together. Coming back, I also needed to understand and empathize with people who were growing these things and collecting these things, but also I needed to understand the government's perspective and the policy.
Even
I think
international community
and also international community, But I think it comes with what am I passionate about? At the end of the day, it comes back to science and the scientific and innovation community. So if I just work in my lab to just saying, oh, if I become the best researcher and do best research in this one narrow field, then I can create a scientific community or a scientific ecosystem. It doesn't work like that. So that's something I understood, and that's where I think I brought in people from CFUGs to people who are in maps trading. So I leveraged their strength also, because there are people who are already doing that for 20-25 years, right? So I work with them. I form a channel with them so that I don't have to reinvent the wheel and do this myself. But that requires a lot of trust, and that's why it took 9 years to create that kind of trust. And there is, let's say, for example, I'll give you an example of orchids, the rare medicinal orchids that we use in our products. That comes from 20-25 years of research by Dr. Bijaya Panta, who grows these medicinal plants in lab through tissue culture, and she trusted me to give these extracts to use in my products. So here, if you just look at the medicinal...
Dr. Pratibha, I met Dr. Bijaya Panta in one conference last time. I was moderating the panel discussion. It's kind. I just wanted to relate how the female can mentor another female, growing female here in Nepal. So Dr. Bijaya is kind of one example for that.
She's
so
amazing.
How do you think the importance of females mentoring other females in developing countries like Nepal to do scientific intervention?
Right. So I'll finish that chain of thought first. So when I say medicinal aromatic value chain partners, 25 years and 25 years of research, that's already 50 years of knowledge base that I am leveraging. So sometimes we tend to think, oh, in these many years you can only do this much, and that's where the power of collective comes in, right? And that's where I'll link this to mentorship, where it took me 9 years to understand all of this and create the linkage. Now, if I mentor someone who is trying to do the same thing, I can help her do that if she is committed or he is committed within 6 months to 1 year. So you're already saving 8 to 9 years in this whole process of trying to understand and create a network, right? Because you are linked to someone who already has a network, and that's what Nepal needs. We need a very complex network system where we should be able to work with each other, trust each other, and focus on the collective purpose rather than the individual purpose only, right? So I think that's what we need in Nepal, and that's why mentorship is tremendously important. And I also have mentors from the past. There were people in my company, especially women, who came to me saying, can I mentor you, you know?
I mean, when I wanted to talk with you, like, I was just thinking, how could I connect with somebody in chemistry background with plants? And when I met you, it's just like I can just connect you to other some of my other friends who are working in ecological agriculture, nature-based agriculture, and like even the medicinal plants, and even like I can get benefited from you. Like there are lots.
Or I can benefit from you, right? Because we have a farm, and I don't have agriculture background, or my like 4 generations didn't do agriculture. But now if I connect to you, you are connected to the ecosystem, and you can support, right? And I don't have to try to learn everything, and I don't have to know it. When
You
someone
don't
asks
have to
me.
panic like where could I find the resources, because you are interconnected. So like coming together in some of the ecosystem or some of the organization is really important.
That's
like
the power of the collective, right?
Yeah. So again, mentoring things like how are you creating the new generation and this science entrepreneurship things?
Yes. So we are part of OWSN, right? Organization of Women
Scientists in Nepal.
Yes. Scientists Nepal, OWSN, right? And also we are, through that we are connected to the larger community of scientists, right? And we are also trying to plug in young researchers in it and try to mentor that. And we also do a lot of awareness program. You are the vice president of it, right? So you know more than that, and so we are trying to do that. And I'm also part of different organizations, or I am advisory of different things where I am responsible to mentor young women.
You are also the board member of FUN, right? Look, how are you
training?
Yes. FUN?
FWIN, yes. Federation of Women Entrepreneurs Association of Nepal. And that was amazing, because when I was board member of that, then I was coordinating this business development center, which was to provide business development services to women entrepreneurs across Nepal. And so we sort of started that from ground up, and then we launched it, and then we were connected to, at that point, almost 77 chapters, just in 77 districts of Nepal. And that's where I could learn about Nepal and Nepali entrepreneurs and Nepali women entrepreneurs more. But most of them are also connected with agriculture or agricultural byproducts, right? And that's where I was learning while connecting with them, you know, and while supporting each other, right? And I think while I give, I'm also getting so much, you know, and so that's why it looks very different. Like, why would you be board member of FWIN if you are looking into science entrepreneurship or science? But then there is so much of, you know, back and forth learning and creating a trust network. And so that's another thing. I mentor women entrepreneurs who are into science or beyond also.
Okay.
You know?
Lastly, like there are lots of things we can do now, you know, and like we can engage on leadership mentoring, and we can engage in entrepreneurship, we can engage in academia, research institution, but we need to prioritize, right? So how important to prioritize to achieve significant goals. So prioritization things, like how do you explain about that?
I think that's number one, because it's so easy to get distracted in Nepal. As I told you, now there are more of us returnees, right? There were so few even before, right? And then everyone would be putting you in the limelight. You're invited in this and that and that. So it's so easy to get derailed and distracted. It's very important to ask yourself every time, why am I doing what I am doing, and how is it connected to the North Star or the Dhruva Tara I'm trying to get to?
Okay, yes.
Or everything is interconnected at the end of the day. Is it directly connected? Am I getting distracted? What is more important than that, you know, for me? So while trying to do that, you have to prioritize. And family is also top in the list, you know. So you have to also educate your family on how they can support you, including you have a daughter too. So including your kids, you have to inform them what you're doing, and you have to make them aware so that they can support you too, you know. So that's one thing you have to prioritize. Another is, instead of looking at these different things, so leadership, entrepreneurship, policy, science as being in different silos or different pillars, we have to look at the interconnection among them. And what aspect of leadership is important for this science entrepreneurship or science policy? What I learned from the science research and entrepreneurship is important to inform the government for science policy. Right? So it's all interconnected. You're not basically learning everything like new. You're basically channeling your learning in different ways. So I think instead of looking at them at different things, we have to look at how we converse them while not being distracted, and what is this boundary for me which I should not necessarily cross. But it's not black and white. We live in a system, we are emotional beings, we have other needs. While we're trying to do all of this, we need to understand the entire ecosystem.
Yeah, we're coming to the end. So lastly, how do you see the scope of science entrepreneurship in Nepal?
Scope of science entrepreneurship. So science entrepreneurship also includes technology, and technology I think is a tool that really supports entrepreneurship, right? For example, well, I would say first there is huge scope for science entrepreneurship in Nepal. Because the whole world is moving towards technology, it's all knowledge economy, all of that. So science has a huge role in that. Another thing is, especially in the sector that doesn't require a lot of infrastructural investments, for example, something related to information technology, AI, data science, all of that, there is a bigger scope, because you're not limited by volume or space or weight, any of that. You can be in any part of the world and do this. But we also need to remember that while we do this, we also need to create a robust ecosystem for other things, other basic needs, because these are the tools. So you have to use these tools to support the ecosystem. For example, AI can directly support agriculture. From plantation, looking at weather forecasts, to entrepreneurship in the sense scanning the whole value chain, supply chain, blockchain system, all of that. So these are interlinked, and I think if we can understand these interlinkages and the connections in a more holistic way, I think there is huge prospect in Nepal, because we're so unique and there's so much to explore.
Dr. Pratibha, I feel your energy in it, and like somebody who is abroad now, just in dilemma that whether I should go back to Nepal and I can work or not, is there any scope? What would be your message for them?
So I think it's a very personal decision. It was for you, it was for me too. So I do not think everyone has to come back. If you want to come back, there are challenges also, but there are challenges there too. So what are you really trying to do is the main thing. Sometimes you may not know. So you have to ask your value system, your goal, your purpose inside to know if you want to come or not. But before coming, you should talk to people who have returned. You should try to understand the context, and you should start doing small things here to understand the context better. By just reading the newspaper or talking to people, you won't know, because some of the challenges are not technical. It's an adaptive challenge, right? So that while doing that, there are other ways. You can invest on entrepreneurs here, you can invest on science here, you can do collaborative research where I could be using my brain to do things here, but there are infrastructures that are outside of Nepal that can be leveraged through collaboration as a scientist also, right? So I think it's a brain circulation, but I do think there has to be a critical mass that has to be living in Nepal to do change. You can't just be outside of Nepal and make a lot of changes here, because like I said, it's not a technical challenge, it's an adaptive challenge. You have to be face to face. You and I talking on a phone versus you and I meeting, completely different sort of energy transfer, right, between you and I, and then the trust transfer. So in that sense, what are you trying to achieve? How would you see yourself as a player in this ecosystem? And if it makes sense for you, you should start exploring before coming back. Otherwise, it's a global thing. You could be doing something in Nepal, still be going back and forth, So
the major discussion point these days is kind of brain drain and then migration issues. So we also need to discuss on how to create an enabling space or environment here in Nepal, so that we can flourish here, or those who return back, they can also flourish.
So you can't be a politician living in somewhere else and then trying to change the political governance system of Nepal, right? So there are constraints in certain fields, so it really depends on where you want to plug in the ecosystem.
Yeah, Dr. Pratibha, like looking at your journey, there are lots of things to talk about it, and we will keep continuing talking about these issues with the interaction with students, farmers. I see lots of overlaps on both of our interests, so we will be there together in future as well. It was so pleasure to have you in SCIPOD. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.